Hey guys, and welcome back to Made to Order a la Orden. I'm Chef Z, and I am back with a very special Chef Z tips video. We are talking all about Pernil. So grab a seat, have a drink, make yourself comfortable, because this tips video is also almost like a Pernil FAQ video. With the holidays practically here and Thanksgiving around the corner, well, it's actually a few days away, you guys have seriously been watching my Pernil video, so thank you so much for that. And you guys have a ton of questions, so I figured it'd be super easy and super beneficial if I just hopped on camera and answer all of those questions. Now, the very first question that a lot of you guys ask me is, hey Z, when I go to the store, what should I look out for when I'm choosing a Pernil? Now, there are a few things that you definitely want to look out for, and one of the main things is that you want to choose a Pernil that is bone in and skin on. Again, you want that bone in because that's going to be the thing to give your Pernil a ton of juices, and you definitely want the skin on because hello, the main part, and in my opinion, the best part about the Pernil is that crispy skin at the end, the cuerito. Like seriously, that is gold. Now, depending on your store and depending on your supermarket, your Pernil might be labeled kind of differently. In my supermarket, it's simply labeled as Pernil, pork shoulder, because I live around a lot of other Caribbean people and a lot of Hispanics. Now, your supermarket might have it labeled as something differently. I've seen it as a pork shoulder picnic or pork picnic. Nonetheless, you definitely want the pork shoulder. I cannot stress that enough because that meat is super tender. It's the same meat that you see all the time in barbecues. That's the thing that makes the pulled barbecue sandwiches. Now, be very careful because my grandmother has made this mistake in the past. Instead of getting a pork shoulder, she'll get a ham because that also has a bone in, but it looks slightly different, so do pay attention to that. Now, another bonus, and this is something that still kind of trips me up to this day, you also want to grab a Pernil that doesn't have that much fat. And one of the easiest ways of telling is if you flip the Pernil over on the bottom side, so not the side with the skin, the side with the meat. If it has like a big ring of fat, try to choose one that doesn't have that big ring. Now, here's where it kind of gets tricky. Just because a Pernil doesn't have that big old ring of fat on the bottom doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get a fatty Pernil. Also, having some fat in your Pernil isn't necessarily a bad thing because again, that does contribute to the juiciness and the tenderness of your Pernil. And last but not least, when you are looking at the skin, you want the skin to be a little bit on the thick side because again, you want that crispy skin to just be absolutely amazing and to die for. Fun fact, my mom and I actually duke it out and we fight every single time for the Pernil because who can get to the cuerito first, me or her? And it's usually a toss up. So now the second question that you guys ask me is, how do I wash my Pernil and how long should I wash it for? Now, there are a couple of different ways of washing the Pernil, and in the video, I practically tell you guys to wash it with some cold water, some vinegar, and some lime juice. Now, I also tell you to do that in my chicharrón de pollo video and my fried pork chop video. It's how I personally like to wash all of the meat, and it also kind of doubles as a brine. Now, in my Pernil video, I also tell you guys to wash it for about 5 to 10 minutes, but if you do it for longer, for like 20 minutes to an hour while you're getting the seasonings ready and all that fun stuff, that's totally fine. Again, you want to wash your Pernil because you want to wash away any blood and any like super porky taste and smell. It's just a traditional thing, and it's also a pet peeve of mine. I hate, especially with roasted meats that sit in the oven for a really long time, I really hate when you bite into like roasted chicken or roasted pork and it just tastes a little gamey. And washing your meat beforehand definitely helps, and it also helps kind of kill a little bit of the bacteria as well. Okay, so another popular question that I get is, how do I season my Pernil? Now, depending on where you're from, so if you're Puerto Rican, if you're Cuban, if you're Dominican, you're going to season your Pernil very differently and however you want. At the end of the day, in my video, I kind of give you the guidelines as to how I like to do it. And honestly, the key ingredient is a ton of garlic, a ton of salt, some oregano. I personally think that using Dominican oregano makes all the difference. A tiny bit of lime. Well, thyme, because we use quite a bit of limes or sour oranges, or you kind of make your own. And I get a lot of questions surrounding the whole sour orange thing or the bitter oranges. Now, in my grocery store, sometimes it's a toss-up, sometimes they have it and sometimes they don't. So I typically like to make my own sour oranges myself. And all you do is you take a juice of an orange with a juice of a lime and you mix it together. And then you yourself can control just how sour you like to make it. Me personally, I like to add just a little bit more lime than fresh orange juice. But again, that's totally up to you. And if you're not a fan of sour oranges, or you don't necessarily cook with sour oranges, then just stick to lime, because trust me, if you season your pernil with just lime, it's going to be amazing. Now, another really key and game-changing tip that I cannot stress enough when it comes to seasoning your pernil is the salt. And I'm gonna break down my little equation method that I shared in my pernil video. So this is how you use the salt. So pretty much whatever your pernil weighs, take that weight, divide it by 2, so divide it in half, and that's gonna give you the maximum amount of salt in tablespoons that you should use to season your pernil. So I'm gonna break it down just a little bit more. So say I have a 10-pound pernil, 10 divided by 2, or half of 10, is gonna be 5. 5 tablespoons of salt is the maximum amount of salt that I should use to season my pernil. Now, if you follow that equation, I promise you, you're going to have a pernil that is perfectly seasoned. It's not gonna be under seasoned and it's not gonna be over seasoned. Now, keeping in mind, we're all different. And you know, some of us like things that are super boldly seasoned, and some of us like it a little bit more subtle. So you can definitely alter that to your liking. But again, that's just my quick, tried and true equation, and hopefully that helps you guys out. Okay, so the number one question, hands down, that I get on my pernil video is, what is sopita? And I've answered that already here on my channel. Sopita is a chicken bouillon cube. I actually have a full Chef Z tips video where I break down what is sopita, why do you use it, different ways of using it. So there you guys have it. It is sopita. Do keep in mind that sopita is salty. So you're already adding in some sopita, some chicken bouillon cubes. So again, keep in mind my little like salt equation thing as well. But at the same time, adding some sopita and the salt, the way I've broken it down in my video and even in this video, is still gonna give you a very well seasoned pernil. You guys also wanna know all the time, can I marinate my pernil for more than 1 day? And the answer is yeah, of course. Guys, seriously, if you're making a pernil, please do it for me, do it for your family. You definitely want that pernil marinating overnight. Now, if you marinate it for 1 day or 2 days, that's not a problem. If anything, it's even better, and it's going to really set in those flavors like you cannot even imagine. Okay, so boiling the pernil. I know that's something that's really unique to my video. I don't know that many people that boil their pernils before they put it into the oven. That was something that my grandmother did all the time. And I have to say that I've made pernils boiling them and not boiling them, and there definitely is a difference. I have to say that when you boil your pernil, it definitely seals in a lot of those flavors. Now, what you have to keep in mind is that you are making a pork shoulder, and that big old hunk of meat, especially pork in general, has the tendency to sweat seasoning, especially the salt. So what you're doing when you're boiling it is that you're opening up all those pores, like pores on your face, yes, pores in the pork, and it's seeping in all those wonderful and fresh seasonings that we're putting into the pernil. And I typically like to boil it for about 45 minutes to an hour. I also think that it makes your pernil super juicy. What I have found when I don't boil my pernil ahead of time, Me personally, I could be wrong, but again, from my experience, I just feel like the Pernil takes A, longer to roast and cook, and B, it doesn't come out as juicy, and those flavors really don't develop as much as they could, especially on the inside. Because remember, Pernil's pretty thick. So we want those flavors to really get in the center. And even though we're poking holes in it throughout the marinating process, something about boiling it like really just kind of permeates all those seasonings throughout. So again, in the video, I do mention that it is an optional step, but I do encourage you not to skip out on it. So a bunch of you guys ask me, what are their measurements when seasoning multiple Pernils? And the measurements are about the same, but there are little caveats. So the salt rule is gonna stay the same, the bitter limes, the oranges, all that stuff is gonna stay the same. So if you're making 2 Pernils, you wanna kind of amp up the ratio for those 2 Pernils, keeping in mind how much they weigh as well. However, pay attention, however, do not add the salt. So in my Pernil video, I put all the seasonings in a food processor, including the salt, and I hit, go, and boom, it kind of does its own thing. When I'm seasoning more than 1 Pernil, I add all the seasonings together, keeping in mind, enough for the 2, and then I actually separate them in 2 different bowls. So say I'm making a 10-pound Pernil and I'm making a 6-pound Pernil, it's gonna make a difference how much lime or sour oranges I'm putting into it, as well as salt for the both of them. Because remember, this 10-pound Pernil is gonna have maximum 5 tablespoons of salt, versus this 12-pound Pernil is gonna have a maximum of 6 tablespoons of salt. Now, earlier this week, I actually had to make, believe it or not, I had to make 4 Pernils for my cousin's baby shower. And I recorded just a quick snippet of how I was seasoning each of them. And you'll see that I divided all the 4 bowls. I labeled how much they weighed, and then I salted them accordingly. And then I also added the limes and the bitter oranges accordingly as well. And that's a tip that, again, I cannot stress, because I'm gonna tell you right now, if you seasoned all that thing together and you put 11 tablespoons of salt, if you were doing the 10-pound Pernil and the 12-pound Pernil together, you are going to end up with a really, really salty Pernil. I've made that mistake in the past, and honey, I'm saving you a disaster right here, right now. So now on to baking and roasting your Pernil. So keep in mind, at this point, you've boiled it for about 45 minutes to an hour, and now it's time to roast it. So you want to preheat your oven at 350 degrees or 375, and that really depends on how big your Pernil is. If you're making a smaller Pernil, so one that's about 8 pounds to 10 pounds, you want to bake it at 350 degrees. Anything that's 10.5 pounds or greater, I would recommend that you roast it at 375. Now, most importantly, you want to roast it in the beginning covered. So cover it with aluminum foil, and you want it baked and roasted anywhere between 3 hours to 5 hours. Again, that seriously depends on how big your Pernil is. You want to baste it from time to time. I would say every hour or every 45 minutes. And you know that your Pernil is on the way of being cooked because the juices that it releases is going to be clear in color. So that's how you know you're on the right path. Now, once your Pernil has been roasting or baking anywhere between those 3 hours to 5 hours, it's now time to uncover it. Now, once you're baking it uncovered, this is totally optional. If you're someone like me and you like that crispy skin, I recommend bumping up the temperature when it's roasting uncovered anywhere between 400 to 425. So if you're roasting the smaller Pernil, those 8 to 10 pounders, put it up to 400 for that last hour that is roasting uncovered. If you're roasting a bigger guy, those guys are about 10.5 pounds to 12 pounds, then go ahead and bump that up to 425. Again, keep a close eye on it. You'll know it's done because it's gonna turn that beautiful golden reddish brown color that makes you just wanna dig right into it. Now, another question you guys ask me is, Z, how do I get that crispy skin? Again, getting that crispy skin really comes into play that last hour that you're roasting the Pernil. And also, quick bonus point, if you want it super crispy, super tasty, put it on broil for about 5 minutes, keeping a very, very close eye, and just squeeze 1/2 of a bitter orange or lime. And let me tell you, whew, you've never had cuerito that tasted any better. Some of you guys have been wondering lately, what do I do with the liquid that I take out of the pernil? Now, real quick. So when we're roasting the pernil and it's roasting it covered, it's gonna release a lot of juices. And then right before we start to roast it uncovered, I take out about half of the juices. And that's the juice that a lot of you guys have been wondering lately, yo, what do you do with that? Now, sometimes I toss it. Simply, I toss it. Other times I'll strain it and I'll create like a gravy. So Thanksgiving is a few days away and I will take the strained liquid from the pernil. I'll create a roux very similar to my baked mac and cheese video. So I'll melt some flour, some butter, and then I'll add that juice and it creates an awesome, awesome gravy. Sometimes I'll strain it again and I'll create a hot sauce. I'll create some stock, I'll put it in the refrigerator to create a soup or a sancocho, or I'll make a locrio. Like, the possibilities are seriously endless, but most of the time, honestly, I toss it because if I don't have use for it, then I know it hurts me too, but yes, it goes down the drain, guys. So your pernil has roasted. It is beautifully brown, red, that skin is super crispy, and you guys wanna know, how long do I let it rest before I cut into it? That's super simple. You typically want to let it rest anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how big it is. And you want to be super careful because even though it's been resting for quite a bit, it's still going to be really hot. So if you're like me and you like to kind of pick at it while it's cooling down, just be careful not to burn your little fingertips, because again, I want you guys all to be safe, especially during the holidays. Another question that I get all the time, and this question I have to say kind of makes me laugh all the time. You guys ask me, what do I eat pernil with? Listen, you can eat pernil with practically anything. The most traditional way of having pernil is with some moro de guandule, and I have that video here on my channel as well. But you can definitely eat it with casabe. That's actually, I lied. My favorite way of having pernil is shredded with some lime and casabe on the side. And that casabe has been toasted with a little bit of garlic, honey. I am in heaven. You will catch my mother and I just picking out, like, no shame. That's gonna be me in 2 days, I'm not even gonna lie. So yeah, you can have it with some casabe, some bull yuca. Moro de guandule is the most traditional, most popular way of having it. Tostones, honestly, you can have it with anything. And another question I get all the time is, hey Z, what do I do with the leftover pernil? Now, you can make a Cuban sandwich, just like I did here on my channel, or you can even kind of shred it completely, and with the leftovers, just dice up a little bit of onions and peppers and put it in a skillet and saute it, and it feels brand new. That's actually one of the more common leftover pernil dishes that I eat in my family. We make a mofongo, or we make plátano pilón, and we have it with some crisped up shredded pernil. So it's almost like vaca frita, but with pernil, Dominican style. And that, you know what? I just might have to make that video here on my channel because I totally just got the idea. Last but not least, you guys want to know, how long does pernil last? So I do recommend that you shred your pernil. So once it's done, it's rested, it's ready to eat, shred that bad boy and eat whatever you can. And if you have leftovers, then hey, put it in the fridge, and that should last you honestly between like 3 or 4 days, and you can remix it and restyle it any other way. So there you guys have it. Those are the top questions you guys have asked me when it comes to pernil. I do want to, before I forget, there is one thing that I do want to mention in terms of a tips when it comes to pernil. Please guys, please use gloves. I very frequently use gloves, cooking gloves, here in my kitchen when I'm not filming, just because I'm a little anal and icky when it comes to dirtying my hands. But in particular, when it comes to pernil, pernil has a ton of garlic. And unless you want your fingertips and your fingernails smelling like garlic for a few days, I do recommend that you guys use some gloves. And the other thing is that when I wash my pernil, I actually wash it in my sink in a bowl, nonetheless, like a huge mixing bowl. But After you finish washing your pernil, please disinfect and wash your sinks as well, because especially with the holidays coming and we're cooking so many things, you don't want to cross-contaminate. So what I typically do is I usually will season the pernil late at night. So after I've prepped all the pies, I've prepped all the salads, it's usually the last thing that I end up seasoning. And then once it's seasoned and it's marinating in the fridge, I go ahead and I disinfect my whole entire kitchen. I want to stress that because again, pernil is a pretty big piece of meat. It is pork. It does have bacteria, and I want to make sure that you and your family are having a happy and a safe, but more importantly, very, very delicious pernil. So there you guys have it. The top questions on the pernil. If you guys have any more questions that I didn't cover here, then comment down below or comment on the pernil video. I'll most likely see them and answer them. Can't wait to guys to, I cannot wait to see you guys next week with an all new video. And more importantly, happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays.